plan.
That's a good plan. We still have the technical difficulty?
Yeah, we only have verbal voting tonight.
Pardon me?
Voting's gonna be all verbal because our buttons are. There's not a lot of us, I think we might be.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see if they do an election or an appointment. My money is on an appointment. At 5:30.
Well, yeah, that's like 10 minutes behind. It's 34.
That clock is different from that clock.
Yeah, well, how did that happen?
Oh, we're late.
Huh, interesting.
That goes green.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we'll get started. The November 14th, 2022 Mobility and Traffic Safety Commission meeting is in order. I get to hit the gavel. Great. Before we get started, I wanted to welcome James Gross, who is our new commission member representing Leucadia. Welcome.
Thank you.
And Amanda, could we do a roll call?
Yes. Chair Michael von Neumann.
Present.
Vice Chair June Hansberger.
Present.
Patricia Trouth is out. Jim Wong.
Here.
Glenn Johnson.
Present.
Harold Standerfer.
Present.
And James Gross. Thank you.
Great. Okay, we'll go ahead and do our Pledge of Allegiance. Okay. First item on the agenda, number 4, is approval of minutes. Have people reviewed the minutes, and do I have a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
Okay, Commissioner Johnson makes a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
And Commissioner Hansberger seconds, and we'll go ahead and just do a vocal vote, I guess. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Let the record show there was no opposed. Okay, so oral communications, seeing as there are no people to speak in oral communications, we'll just move on to special presentations, proclamations, and announcements. And the first item is the San Diego County Sheriff's Office quarterly presentation. Sergeant Rob Siegfried. Thank you. Thank you, Rob.
You're welcome. This one, right?
Do we get to have the...
Does my voice should work?
So you asked for stats comparing the 2 years, 2021 and 2022, for certain roadways. Coast Highway from La Costa to Solana Beach, La Costa Avenue, I guess the whole stretch there, and Encinitas Boulevard, Rancho Santa Fe, El Camino Real, Manchester, Santa Fe, Vulcan, San Elijo, and Leucadia. I had our crime analysts pull these numbers, comparing speeding tickets, and you asked for distracted driving. So I took that to mean cell phones, because there's no actual section for distracted driving. It has to be a specific section. So that's the section that applies, is cell phone usage. So as you can see, if we could scroll that up. Thank you. Go ahead. Okay. Yeah, it's fine. So do we have the specific? Scroll down a little bit. I want to see how, I forgot how this thing is set up, how they did it. Okay, so there you go. Yeah, so speeding, you got Coast Highway 2021 through the same time. They just did it month to month. So those 9 months, it increased 1,900, but that could be due to COVID. During COVID, our traffic unit, and actually many of the deputies were instructed not to go out and do full force enforcement. So that's probably why you see a big jump. So that may not be fair comparison. The cell phone usage, same thing, 18, it went up from 18 to 47. And then the texting. So there's a section for using your phone, like talking on it up to your ear or on speaker or whatever, which is illegal. By the way, everyone thinks it's legal. To text messaging. So the text messaging section is that other section, the 0.5, 123.5. So that was 77, and then it went to 117. So those are the numbers. If you want to compare the streets, you can. It's got the breakdown specifically. I don't know if this is what you were looking for, Michael.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I thought it would be important to occasionally have this kind of information to kind of review it in the hopes that it might tell us something about what's going right, what's going wrong, what needs more attention, what doesn't. And when I first saw these numbers, I personally thought, I wonder what effect COVID had in this. And I remember you mentioning that during the heat of COVID, so to speak, there wasn't a lot of interaction between enforcement. So I understand that the numbers can seem a little skewed, and we want to be really careful that we don't just jump because we see this huge increase in everything. But I'm just wondering from you and your fellow officer or fellow deputies, has the speeding really increased, generally speaking, or is it the same as what you would expect in a normal city of our size?
I think it's about the same. I haven't seen an increase. Sometimes we have more tickets than others, other months, depending on our guys are on vacation or are they out sick? Because we've had guys out for 2 to 3 weeks with COVID and stuff like that, injuries. So sometimes we're short-staffed. So when we're full force, sometimes our tickets will go up. Usually we're averaging around 1,000 tickets a month. That's my average for my whole unit. I have 14 deputies. And then that wouldn't be that would probably be Del Mar and Solana Beach. But the majority of the sites are written in the Encinitas. We only have a few. We have one motor unit in Del Mar and one in Solana Beach. And we have 4 in Encinitas.
Okay.
So
When you see numbers like this, because I'm sure you guys review things like this, does it help you decide on where to do the enforcement?
yes, we get a lot of citizen complaints. So we get a lot of emails that go to the city and then they get forwarded to us asking for specific areas, like residential areas where they notice they're speeding and people want, stop signs installed and everything else. So we'll go out and hit those areas and see what we get. But generally, the main areas we work are the busier intersections or busier streets, like North El Camino Real or the 101 down by the State Beach. That's a hot area because of the speed limit change a few years ago. So, and then the north end too of the 101. But that sometimes is hard because of the speed bumps involved. And also, every month, I do a monthly meeting with our own station command, our captain, lieutenants, and we go over our statistics. And then we also look at accident rates. And we're averaging around 30 or 40 a month in the whole city of Encinitas. That's not too bad.
Okay.
So,
I don't know if any other commissioners have any questions. Commissioner Standifer.
Thank you. You mentioned the accident, push the button. There. You mentioned accident rates, and maybe I should ask the chair this question. Would it be possible in the future to get a breakdown on location and severity on the accidents?
yes, I could definitely get you the stats for where they occurred. We have a map, and automatically we do a monthly. It does a monthly computation of where all the accidents are within the city, and you could see it on a map. I could definitely present that to the next meeting if you guys would like to see that, where it's got the hot spots.
Thank you.
Well, our next meeting is February of 23.
Okay. Well, I'm gone in March, just to give you a heads up. I'm retiring, so yeah.
Congratulations.
We'll have a new person probably coming in around February. Actually, well, they'll come in March, but I'll try to get them to this meeting in February, the new person that will be taking over probably.
Any other commissioners, any other questions?
Yes. On some of the internet forums, there are a lot of complaints about e-bikes and irresponsible youths. Is that counted in your numbers anywhere?
Yes, it is counted in our monthly numbers, but it's really hard to separate the regular bikes versus e-bikes right now, because on our accident reports, there's no specific box to check. So when folks ask, or city or anyone asks for specific stats, we have to go through and look at each individual report one by one. Very time consuming. But we haven't done that in probably in the last 3 or 4 months. Somebody asked for all that and we totaled them up. But we are doing a lot with the e-bikes. We work with the Bike Coalition, Christine Schindler, and we're gonna do another one here on the 30th, but almost monthly we're doing something with e-bikes. And we actually go to the schools and are putting on bike rodeos and with deputies there and school staff and then Christine and everything else. So we're definitely involved with that.
Have you seen an improvement in e-bike behavior?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, the kids know, and the deputies first, of course, try to just educate the kids. We don't want to write these middle schoolers tickets and stuff like that, but when one kid gets a bike, another kid tells their parents, hey, this kid has a bike, can I get a bike too? And before you know it, the whole school has bikes.
Oh, yeah.
So the deputies are getting out at these schools in the morning and lunchtime, and they are definitely keeping them from running stop signs, and they're noticing the deputies are out there and they're following the rules, trying to get on the right side of the road, et cetera, not ride double, put your helmet on, actually snap the helmet, not let it hang. So yes, I could tell you that it's helping.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments? I want to thank you, Sergeant, for coming and providing this data and everything. I'm sure you guys use it to benefit your work and everything, and it's beneficial, I think, for us in the community and residents to be able to see what the trends are and everything. And again, when I first saw these numbers, and if anybody else in the community opens up the agenda and they look at this and they see this big jump in speeding, I do think it's important, if anybody asks us, to mention that COVID had a big impact in this and everything. So if we look next year, we might get a more usual set of data and everything. But I do thank you for coming in.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, I noticed that we have a couple of people. Is this for oral communications, or are they speaking on an item?
We have one for oral communications, if you're up for that.
Yes, if that's okay with Evan, if we delay it just for a moment? Okay. We'll backtrack a little, and we'll do oral communications. This is where people have 3 minutes to address the commission on any item of their interest or concern. It is not an action item, so we can't enter into dialogue about it and everything. But sometimes what happens is somebody might mention something, and we may address it during Commissioner Corner. So, homework. Take one, pass it down. Amanda. Yes, and who do we have?
We have Dennis Caden.
Dennis? Hi. And Dennis, I want to let you know that if you look at me and I have my face down, I'm taking notes. I'm not ignoring you. There's a button next to your microphone, and it should go to push it so it's green so we can hear you.
I think it was removed. Amanda can turn it on and off from over there, I think.
Not yet. No.
Here we go. How's that? Great. Well, thank you, members, for being here and doing what you do for Encinitas. I am a preserve our community character kind of person. And I just want to address in the mobility element, there's a street called Piraeus, and it was designated as a suburban collector. And I understand collectors are defined as roads that join two arterials. And one of the things that may have been missed is that Piraeus actually dead ends at the southern end. So it does not fit the collector status. And the difficulty for our neighborhood is long ago, as development took place, we lost access to Leucadia Boulevard to get to I-5 South. So now, if you look at the map, you'll see you take Piraeus, and then the little red line shows you that you have to go through Normandy. I mean, you can get through some other streets, but they're even narrower. Then you take Normandy to Urania. So I have pictures showing that when you get to Normandy, there's big signs that Caltrans put there or somebody, and it says, you know, you have to go left, and that it dead ends at that piece. So there's a photo, I don't know, I think I have a photo there of where it dead ends at Ocean View. Yes, sir, you do. So it really limits our access out of the neighborhood. And I would ask that you either treat it as a hybrid or just redesignate it as a neighborhood highway or whatever, so that it doesn't carry the kind of traffic it does. Does that make sense? And the reason I bring it up is because at one time there was another street that you were infringing upon private property, and it took probably like 9 months for us to address it and finally get it off. So I want to get to this early, because the last thing we need in our neighborhood is even more traffic. So I would ask you to redesignate it. And that's it. So,
Okay, I just want to make sure I have your concerns accurate. You're looking to have it reclassified?
yeah, give it a new typology, which, I mean, it was always a frontage road. And, but over the years, and council has, every time there was development in our neighborhood, we were told, don't worry about it. When Caltrans does their improvements, they're going to give you access. But that has not happened. So, and they're done. I mean, we all know that they're pretty much done for the next 35 years. So we're limited. And Urania is a very, very narrow street with lots of private driveways on it. So it really impacts that street quite a bit, all of us.
Okay.
Thanks much.
Yep.
And thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you for your comments, yeah.
You're welcome.
Okay. So any other oral communications? Not yet? Okay. So we'll move on to, I need my glasses here. Under special interest, 6B, Modal Alternatives Project, also known as MAP, MAP Encinitas, updates. And we have Evan, Senior Mobility Planner, to help us out with that.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Mobility and Traffic Safety Commission. I'm Evan Jednak, Senior Mobility Planner, here tonight to present the MAP Encinitas project. We also have Roberto Ruiz Salas here from CRA, the project consultant. So the purpose of tonight's presentation is to inform the Commission of the project and to solicit comments and feedback. We'll cover the project scope and schedule, some background information about the 2018 ATP community outreach that has occurred and the prioritization process, and funding for the high priority projects. After the slideshow, we'll take commission questions. So the purpose of MAP Encinitas is to prioritize projects from the Active Transportation Plan, or ATP. The ATP was adopted in 2018 and established a network of biking and walking facilities throughout the city. An implementation plan was not part of the ATP due to funding limitations. So this project is funded through a Caltrans grant, and the scope of work includes identifying the unbuilt ATP projects, prioritizing these projects, developing concept plans and cost estimates, and identifying project phasing and funding sources. So we're nearing the end of the project. We now have a draft of the MAP Encinitas plan, which was included in tonight's agenda. And so I just want to point out that this project does not include identifying new bike and pedestrian improvements that are not already in the ATP. It is simply prioritizing those projects already in the ATP. So in our initial analysis of the 2018 ATP, we found that it included 86 miles of proposed bike facilities, 25 miles of proposed sidewalks, and 29 pedestrian spot improvements. So one of the first steps of the project was to determine which ATP projects have been built since the ATP was adopted in 2018. We did this through a review of recent aerial photography and consultation with various city staff. We found that 21.5 of the 86 miles of bike facilities were built, 6.7 of the 25 miles of ped facilities were built, and 3 of the 29 ped spot improvements were built. So this map shows the existing bike facilities throughout the city, which includes the 21.5 miles that were built post-ATP for a total of 31.6 miles. Different line colors denote different types of bike facilities, as can be seen in the legend. This map shows the remaining unbuilt ATP bike projects in dashed lines, and the total mileage of the remaining projects is 66.2 miles. So these are the projects that we are prioritizing, along with the dashed projects on this slide, which are the pedestrian projects which have not been built. So this map shows existing pedestrian facilities like sidewalks in orange and black solid lines. There's 197.2 miles of existing pedestrian facilities, and there's 45.9 miles of dashed black lines. Those are the projects that remain unbuilt. Spot improvements are also shown here as colored dots. Next, I'll discuss community outreach. Here's a summary of the community outreach that has occurred thus far. In August 21, we released a community survey seeking input on community values, public funding priorities, and various alternative transportation scenarios. We did receive over 1,200 responses to this survey. Following the survey, Workshop 1 was held in November 21. Workshop 2 was held in March 22. That was a virtual workshop, and that dealt primarily with the prioritization criteria. There have also been ongoing meetings with the project development team, which is made up of city staff from various departments. So again, just touching on the survey, we did receive 1,200 responses. Topics included general community values, how to prioritize bike and pedestrian infrastructure implementation, how to prioritize funding, mode share, mode and mode choice rationale, trip purpose, how to increase cycling, walking, and transit, and also demographic information. So this table shows survey results for top community values. The top 3 here are to ensure safe travel, to design neighborhoods for walking and biking, and to safeguard clean air. This table shows survey results on top funding priorities. Top 3 are maintaining streets, maintaining pedestrian walkways, and reducing traffic congestion. This table shows survey results on top priorities for bike and ped infrastructure projects. The top 3 are gap closure, proximity to schools, jobs, and attractions, and anticipated demand. And this last table shows survey results to promote walking and biking. Top 3 are more walking paths and trails, improved buffers between bike and peds and motorists, and better connectivity of walking paths. That's a summary of the citywide survey we did. Moving on to the discussion of the prioritization methodology. So the prioritization project had 6 phases. First was to define the set of planned projects. We've kind of touched on that. Then to define the prioritization criteria, to operationalize the prioritization criteria, assigning point values to the criteria, calculating scores for each project, and ranking the projects. So I'm going to touch briefly on these in each of the next slides. So this is the planned bike project map, which was shown earlier, except the projects have been numbered here. So there are a total of 68 unbuilt ATP bike projects. This is the map of the ATP PED projects that are unbuilt, of which there are 74. So there are 142 total unbuilt bike and PED ATP projects to be prioritized. And phase 2 is defining the prioritization criteria. So these 8 criteria surfaced as the most important throughout the survey and the community workshops. They are safety, network connectivity, access improvement, GHG and VMT reduction potential, equity, project cost, comfort, and community support. Phase 3 was defining the prioritization criteria and possible points. So for example, safety is defined by the number of bike and ped involved collisions per mile along project extents. I'll just touch on a few. Access improvement is met if the planned project is within 500 feet of certain key land uses, like beaches, parks, schools, transit stops. Won't read them all out here. But we'll go on to phases 4 and 5. So this was assigning points and calculating the scores. So this slide just shows 2 examples with scores for each criterion and the total points added up. So the process resulted in a ranked, prioritized list of all the 142 unbuilt ATP projects. This map shows the top 5 citywide bike projects in green, top 5 citywide ped projects in orange, effectively creating a citywide top 10 list. And this map here shows the top 5 projects by neighborhood. Again, bike projects in green and ped projects in orange. You can see some neighborhoods have more bike projects, some have more ped, based on the results of the prioritization. And here is a combined map showing the top 10 citywide, as well as the top 5 neighborhood projects, resulting in the top 35 list. So for each of these 35 projects, we have created conceptual designs and cost estimates. And now Roberto from CRA will go over these top 35 projects in the following slides.
All right, thank you. So what do we do to conceptualize these projects? This is a planning effort, but we still wanted to make sure that some of these projects were constructible and not just a little line on a map. So what we did is we looked at the existing conditions and then the right-of-way dimensions in Google Earth and also used the near map. Near map is close to Google Maps, but it gets updated every 4 months, and you can really go in there and take very detailed measurements from an aerial imagery. Where then after that, we looked at the most constrained right-of-way for all these projects. So we looked where the right-of-way was the smallest, meaning if we were able to fit this cross-section in this smaller right-of-way, we would be able to probably do it throughout the corridor. And then all these locations, we developed some conceptual plan views, which I'll show you right now in cross-sections. And then also for the top 10 projects, we did look at more detailed construction impediments that could happen, so constructability issues, and we quantified those, and that's how we came up with our cost estimate. So for the top 10 projects, the top 5 ped and the top 5 bikes, we did do a detailed cost estimate to make sure that we did have the constructability budget that we would need. And then for the other 25 projects, we did more of a linear type of unit cost. So starting with like I said, I'm gonna go over the top 10 citywide projects. These are the top 5 bikes first. The first project is the Vulcan Avenue multi-use path. Even though this is a bike project, it will benefit both bikes and paths because it is a multi-use path. And it'll be a class 1 going from on Vulcan Avenue, going from La Costa Avenue to Santa Fe Drive. This project, there's a couple of options as to how to build it. It's either within the city's right-of-way or going into the rails right-of-way, as we show here on the screen. If we try to keep everything on the city's right-of-way, we would be impacting a lot of private development in public right-of-way, and we try to stay away from it. So this is a project, and you have a total estimated cost of, I thought we updated, okay, of 21 million, close to $22 million in this cost estimate. And we did put a 30% contingency in these because we don't know when the funding is gonna come in and we don't know how prices are gonna be at that time when these projects are funded. And then we have our number 2 ranked project is the Quail Gardens Drive Westlake Street bike lanes. These are to install class 2 buffered bike lanes where there's currently only class 2 bike lanes. As you saw when we went through the priority list, one of the big things was safety, and safety meant separating the bikes and the peds as much as possible from vehicles. So really adding a buffered bike lane on this project will provide a safer bicycle facility for users of all ages and experience levels to use. In order to be able to accomplish this buffered bike lane, the curb and gutter and the sidewalk along this whole corridor will have to be moved closer to the right-of-way, being why there's such a high estimated cost for this. Then the project number 3 is Manchester Avenue bike lanes. This is to install class 2 bike lanes along Manchester Avenue from Via Poco to Encinitas Boulevard. This is gonna provide a north-south connectivity to the eastern portion of the city and also connect residential neighborhoods, commercial, and a lot of hiking trails. And the total estimated cost for this is closer to the $6 million. The number 4 project is the San Elijo Avenue bike lanes and also a bike route. As you can see here, this image shows a trail and then also brand-new sidewalk. But this project is only to install the bike lanes and the bike route. So this Class 2 bike lane on San Luis Avenue goes from Chesterfield Drive to Kilkenny Drive, and then it goes into Sharrows after that. And total cost estimate for this is $3 million, close to $4 million. And then our last bicycle project is to install Class 3, so Sharrows, along Union Street, Hermes Avenue, and Sirius Avenue bike routes. This project is a little bit different than the one that was identified on the ATP project, as that was just a simple Class 3 and then Class 2 bike project along Union Street. But we noticed that there was also some gap deficiencies on Hermes and Sirius, so this made for a better project that could be built in a faster timeline than if you try to build the whole Union Street. And this provides actually more connections along these 3 streets. And the reason why this total estimated cost is lower is because this is only implementing a Class 3 bike route and also designated parking areas, parallel parking areas. So it's more of a striping project more than having a lot of actual impacts, concrete building. And then even though this is the number 6 ranked project, we're going into the top 5 pedestrian projects. So again, the ranking is only based on the points, but we still have the top 5 bikes and top 5 pets. So this is the sidewalk infill on Luquidia Boulevard, and this is getting close to the beach access. So this is really providing brand new class sidewalk along Luquidia Boulevard. As you can see in the image, there's also a Class 2 buffered bike lane, and that's a project that it's discussed under the Luquidia top 5 priorities projects. So this is installing sidewalk. Now, one of the things that we did note around this project is that sometimes you're gonna have to install retaining walls. So for example, this project requires a big chunk of a retaining wall to be installed because of the adjoining existing conditions. So that was also considered in this estimated cost, as you can see here. The next project is a sidewalk infill on Saxony Road between La Costa Avenue and 1,000 feet south of La Costa Avenue. The reason why it stops 1,000 feet south is because there is sidewalk south of that portion, and then La Costa has sidewalk that connects to this project. So this project will also require a retaining wall and a drainage ditch that's existing to be relocated behind the sidewalk. The number 3 pet project is the Coast Highway 101 sidewalk infill. This is going to provide a connection to the existing trail on Coast Highway 101. And you can see the cross section here. We're adding buffered bike lanes, a bike lane. You got the sidewalk to the east side and then the existing trail on the west side. So this was a project identified through the ATP plan. And then the 4th sidewalk project is Nardo Road sidewalk infill. This project abuts the San Diego Academy High School. So it's very important because there's already sidewalk on one side of the road, but there's no sidewalk on the west side of the road. So this would be installing sidewalk and curb and gutter along on this segment of the road. And then the last pedestrian project is to install a pedestrian crossing at the intersection of Vulcan Avenue and Coastal Highway 101. This is just a conceptual of how we could cross it. There are similar pedestrian crossings around the city, so we would probably install something similar to that, but this is just the concept that was used. As I mentioned before, there's 5 top priority projects per neighborhood that were also identified, but those ones we didn't go into creating a detailed cost estimate into each one because that would take a lot of effort to do so. So we used some unit costs provided by the city to create those fees, those construction costs. But we did the same thing. We went to the most constrained right-of-way in this segment, and we looked to see if the section or how we could make the section fit and for this corridor. I'm not gonna go into all those details because we're running out of time, and I don't wanna just go into all of them. You can probably see them in the agenda you probably have in front of you. I'm willing to discuss them if you have any questions about any one of particular of those. But yeah, I think you have the plans for those. This is a map of all the projects Seven showed before. So this includes the top 35 that discussed, and then the other ones that we didn't go into detail. As far as funding, there's a lot of funding sources out there for these projects, and I think that's the important part. I was talking to Evan about this before, that usually when we identify funds or we want to do projects, there's a lot of projects that might be higher in the priority list, but if there's a funding source that doesn't fit that one project, then you should go down the list and just choose the project that best fits it. Because there's the statewide active transportation program that really focuses on bicycle projects. But then you also have the urban greening program, that if you have an opportunity to add some greening component to it, you would be able to build an active transportation project with some greening components. So you would have to go down the priority list and identify which project was that. There's a new grant we're gonna go on to cycle 2. It's called the Clean California, which really chooses projects that where there's a lot of trash deposits. Usually where there's no sidewalk, like all those sidewalk infill projects, those could be good candidates. So even though then they might not be in the top 10, I would still go in and choose them according to what the funding source is. So, I mean, there's a lot of funding opportunity out there, so it's a matter of trying to get all these projects built. And that's it for us.
Okay, thank you very much for the, excuse me, for the presentation. Commissioners, any questions, comments? Commissioner Wong?
Yes, thank you, Evan and Roberto. Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm actually eager to see some of your proposed improvements because they sound great, and I'm glad to see that the city and you are paying attention to bikes and pedestrian facilities. So I did have a few questions, though. One is about bike routes, Class 3 bike routes. So are those always accompanied by sharrows? Because sometimes they're just a sign, and I don't feel that there's much improvement at all, or just a plain road. For instance, Lake Drive, Project 61, I think, is supposed to be improved by, designated as a bike route. But is there any evidence that there's any improvement in safety, that motorists actually pay attention to it?
Yeah, so.
I don't feel any safer on a bike route because there's a sign that says bike route.
So class three projects are usually accompanied by sharrows on the street. So even if you've seen there's a place where it's only bike route, it is a safer condition to put the striping on the ground. That's how it's supposed to be. Now, usually where class 3 bike routes are selected is where there's low speeds and low volumes. So there's a lot of different categories for when you can use different facilities, but class 3 routes are intended to be used only on lower speed roads and also in lower volumes. Otherwise, we try not to put them in there. Now, it doesn't mean that it's the safest facility for users of all ages and experience levels, but sometimes the city, depending on the funding, if there's no funding available, it's still a safer route than not having anything at all.
Okay, I understand that it may give the impression of being safer, but I certainly don't feel any safer, and I'm pretty experienced in biking, and I don't think a family that between 8 and 80 group is necessarily going to feel safer just because there's a painted arrow on the road. But I think that we don't need to discuss it much more since I think the decision's already made. Okay.
Yeah, there's a national, state, and regional guidance as far as what facilities you should use. And obviously, class 1, separated bikeway, or a class 4, a class 1 is a bikeway that's completely different than the road. And then a separate protected bikeway is a class 4. You have an actual barrier next to the road, next to the vehicles. Those are the preferred options anywhere. But because of right-of-way conflicts or because of funding, sometimes those are just not possible to install.
Okay, I understand. So bike routes basically are best you can do with the funding and the space. So
Yeah, I think again, we have to go back to what this project is doing is just taking what's in the ATP. So, whatever's in the ATP is what we're prioritizing. So yes, there are several projects that are class 3 bike routes, which may just be, paint on the road. And we understand that there may not be a lot of desire to have these built in the city. So that being said, that we're not trying to add new projects with this effort.
Okay, as long as you understand it's kind of, I don't know what the right term is, sort of like greenwashing. It's not really helping that much. But we don't need to discuss it anymore. I had a question about your prioritization. So the topic that gives the most weight is safety, number of collisions. But if there's a route that's basically deemed so hazardous or dangerous that people don't even use it at all, you will get no collisions. But it might be a useful route. For instance, Senaliho between Manchester and Cardiff Town Center, that S-turn. Like, I don't think there's enough room for a bike route or anything, but I never go there simply because I don't think it's safe. But it'd be a really nice route to take if it's available. But using your prioritization criteria, you get no points because no one uses that. It's just too dangerous. Same with routes that do not exist. There could be ones that are really useful, but because they don't exist, there'll be no accidents there. So, for instance, new bike trail from Birmingham to Manchester and then to Swan Beach. That's a really nice trail. But before it was built, of course, there are no accidents because no one's going there. So you get no points in that. So I really have to question whether your prioritization is correctly weighted because it ignores that possibility that people will avoid the route or the route doesn't exist.
Do we take that? Yeah. So as far as the prioritization, so all these projects were identified in the 2018 active transportation plan. So those were all identified in that area. So if there's a route that wasn't identified there, we didn't look into it. As far as prioritization is, we give this to be able to rank something or to give you a number. It doesn't mean that these are the projects that have to be built in that order. And that's why I wanted to focus on the funding when I mentioned that, because though the prioritization, it's not going to stop the city from building projects out of order. This is just a score. We had to give it an order, and this is how it was selected for this through everything else. But it doesn't mean that that project is not going to get built because it's not a higher priority. Now, if there's a route that's not even created that you don't see in the active transportation map, then that's a different story, and that's something that the city could update the active transportation map if it's deemed that it's a better route.
Okay, thank you for that. I do have one more suggestion that's not in the MAP. I'm not even sure it's in your domain, but it's a shovel-ready project that would improve biking capability in the city a lot, and that is just painting symbols on traffic signal detectors, the loops that detect signals, that change signals. You're just painting a symbol there saying, put your bike here, and you have the best chance of triggering the signal. There's a symbol in the MUTCD, I think it's 9C-7 or something like that, that says, that shows the symbol of the paint on the loop. And it probably costs a few $100s to paint one, but it would greatly improve the biking facilities in Encinitas if you had some of those, because it's really frustrating if you're biking and the signal does not turn for you. So that's why I'm saying it's shovel-ready. The symbol is the MUTCD. Abe knows about it. I've already brought it at this meeting before, but I haven't seen any action on it. So I don't know whether you're aware of it, but that would help a lot.
Yeah, I'm aware of those improvements, and they are very helpful. I've used them in other cities before. I don't know that it necessarily fits into this project. The mobility element update, which is also going on, that is a comment that I believe we've heard before, and that's something kind of on our radar to somehow get that at least into the policy side of things in the element. I don't know if Abe or anyone, maybe Roberto, can speak to those actually being built now, being shovel-ready in the city.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your presentation then.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Question?
Oh, yes, Commissioner Standifer.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. There was a lot of information and a lot of work went into this effort. I'd like to go back to the prioritization project number 10, which I believe was the crosswalk at, I believe you said at 101 and Encinitas Boulevard.
This one.
Right, yeah, that one. Now, is that going to be at Vulcan or at 101?
That's at Vulcan and
It is at
Encinitas.
Vulcan. And it will be a cross project?
We don't know that, and it doesn't have to be. This is how we're showing it. We felt that could potentially have the most benefit. Yeah, shown as pedestrian crossing like the one we have downtown.
So it'd be similar to those? Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Hansberger? Oh.
No, you go.
Okay. Commissioner Gross.
Thank you, guys. That was awesome. I guess just a question on just from a high level, if I look at the ATP projects, it seems like we're about 25% complete on what you had proposed on both bike and pedestrian, roughly. Is that good or bad, or is there more momentum or less momentum? I'm just curious on how that looks.
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, the climate action plan lays forth certain timeframes for when the entire ATP has to be adopted. I don't know what it is exactly off the top of my head, but I believe it says like by 2030, the entire ATP should be implemented. It's probably safe to say that's not going to happen. In talking with the sustainability manager, she mentioned, that's probably something that'll have to be updated in the cap if we're not going to hit those targets. But I believe it was, a 2030 target to implement all these projects. So, I mean, it could be better. I think right now there is a lot of momentum with mobility, or in the past couple of years there has been with the council trying to get mobility projects built. We have the mobility element underway, which is the overarching kind of policy level document. And so hopefully once that's adopted in a couple more months here, that will give an even clearer path to more of these projects getting built.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hansberger.
Thank you. Thank you. That was a great presentation. I really appreciated seeing all the different plans and designs and cost benefits. I'm all about mobility in the city, obviously, because I'm on this commission, and I appreciate the work that you've done. As we move forward, I think my biggest question is funding, and I know you did bring that up, and you had a lot of great ideas about different funding sources and how to get them to apply to different projects here. And I guess my question is, moving forward, are you going to continue to work with the city and help them gain funding? Or Evan, are you taking that over? Who's working on funding now? Because I feel like that's the next big hoop, is how do we get these projects funded? So is there a plan to start looking at all of these or continue to work as a team? Because that would be fabulous.
Well, we'll be working with Roberto and CRA for the duration of this project. It will be ending soon, but so yes, I will, as the senior mobility planner, I will take over kind of being in charge and looking for grant opportunities and things like that. With every grant that comes up, there's the opportunity potential to hire, a project consultant maybe. But yeah, it will be under my purview going forward, yeah.
Okay, so it's just going to fall on your shoulders to try to find the grants and get them all written. And I know it's a lot of work, so I just was just wondering if you had a team or, how that was going to just proceed.
I mean, in the long-range planning division, we're looking to hire 2 new planners. Hopefully, they'll start in the next couple months. We're looking to hire a planning manager. So our team is a little bare bones right now, but we're hoping to fill it back up in the next couple months. And then we'll have a full staff that can look into these funding opportunities. On our mobility element update project, again, it's a separate but related project going on concurrently. We have consultants working on that too. And so we're always, collaborating, looking for opportunities like that.
Okay, fabulous. And then I just had one it's not related to funding at all. It was just a question about something I saw on the map when I was reading it yesterday. And it's on the slide that has the existing and planned. It's at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
I think, yeah, it's that one. If you could make that one a little bigger. I just had a quick question. It shows there's a black line along La Costa there. I see the signal, and I know the signal has been put in, but that black line, yeah, it's showing that there's a sidewalk there or something. I mean, there really is not a side. There's nothing there. So I just wanted to, I guess we don't really have a sidewalk. Is that we do have like painted bike lanes, and I guess, maybe there is something painted on the road that has a walking person in there right now, but it's not a sidewalk. So I just was questioning, it says built, and there's nothing that's really been built along La Costa right there. So I just wanted to circle back and double check that either, am I misunderstanding what that's supposed to represent? Because we do not have sidewalks along La Costa.
Yeah, correct. So this would represent all pedestrian facilities. So obviously sidewalk is the most common one. This would include things like the painted pedestrian walkway. I understand that it's not as helpful as a sidewalk, and that it's there's a lot of bad comments, bad thoughts about that, and then that we want to get a sidewalk built along there. But yeah, this would have picked that up as an existing pedestrian facility. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't mean to call attention to it. I was just confused, and it does say sidewalk and trail there, and it drew a black line. So that's all. It's just the painted walk area that's on the road. So thank you very much.
Yeah, definitely. We can probably change that in the legend to take out sidewalk/trail and maybe just say pedestrian facilities. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, Glenn Johnson here. I guess all these projects are needed, and the question is, how do we go about getting them funded? I guess that's someplace in your area, Evan. I'm kind of assuming that the map and the mobility element will go together in a year or so, and we'll have one mobility element that says what on a long term we want, and the map will suggest the projects that will get us there. Is that correct?
Yeah, more or less. That's the intent, is to have them work together. Yeah, you would reference one and would point you to the other one. You'd reference the element, point you to the map, and then you'd see specific projects.
Right, and then funding is kind of on an opportunistic basis if you're looking for grants.
Yeah, and it's not just the planning division working on it when it comes to funding. We're working with Abe's division, CIP, on the funding as well. But I don't know, Abe may have information to add. I know him and I have had a couple brief conversations about looking at some of the top ranked projects from this map and beginning to explore funding for those.
That sounds like we're making progress, but it's snail progress. I wish we had a big bucket of money.
Yeah, don't we all? That'd make it a lot easier.
Okay, any other questions or comments? I'll weigh in on mine. I want to thank you for this presentation. I know in 2018, there was a lot of excitement about the ATP actually being completed, and then it just sat on a shelf and everything. So I'm very encouraged that this next step has been taken. It gives us more of a plan, more of an outlook about how things get done. I'm constantly amazed at how complicated and time-consuming things are, but that's the world we live in. I do have a specific question about number 3. I think it was Manchester or something. Yeah. I'm not quite sure where this area, what this picture, where this is.
I think, and I'm trying to remember correctly, but this is closer to this area. Yeah, it is closer to this area. The right-of-way is very confined in there. As you can see, there's some, I guess, the right-of-way has to be taken back, the city's right-of-way. So that's what you're showing here. There's a right-of-way, and the improvements go all the way to the right-of-way. But this is around this area. I don't know exactly what the name of the road is or what area of the road it is, but I know it's along this portion.
Okay. Yeah, I'm having trouble imagining this, and so is it possible to go to a Google map?
Sure. Let's see if I remember correctly. There you go.
Well, it mentioned that Trevor.
Yeah, so it's right about, actually right around there, because there's actually a big culvert, so if you.
Yeah, it referenced Trabert Ranch Road and Sienna Canyon Road.
Okay.
So it would be in this portion of Manchester here. I don't know if you want to go down in a street view or.
No, I know exactly where that is. Yeah, I drive on that road, and it's very narrow, and there's no bike lanes or sharrows or anything. So I like to, it's good that it's in the plan, and hopefully it can be resolved or actually implemented. I don't know how you would have to take more right away. Is that correct, to put in the bike lanes?
Yeah, so part of the cost estimate was doing some smaller retaining wall, a retaining curb on the back to be able to do that, some utility relocations here and there. Adding a culvert, I think, I know we accounted for a lot of culverts because of the drainage. But those are just estimates. Obviously, it's not detailed. Like, once you go into full design is when you can actually get to the real number. But it is as detailed as we tried to do it. And that's why we chose this part of it, because the right-of-way is super constrained. So if you can get it built here, you can probably get it built everywhere else.
Yeah, it's a good location for Class 2 bike lanes, because there's a little hill there, a little bump, but it's a very good way to access the coast from, Rancho Santa Fe and everything like that, rather than having to go up and over Encinitas Boulevard and things like that. So I just wanted to make sure that I was clear on the area, and yeah, I'd love to see one of those. But thank you very much for this, and I hope the project will continue, and that we'll hear about some new grants and everything that are coming in to help build some of these. So appreciate it. Thank you. If anyone else has any questions, if not,
We do have two public speakers on this item.
on this, okay, great.
We have Karen Caden, followed by Dennis Caden.
Hi there. Hey, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to speak. I just learned what share row is. I didn't look at that print when I was looking at Leucadia Project number 20, Piraeus Street bike lanes. And I am happy to understand what it is. And this is the reason why I'm here. I am going to speak on rank 2 ID. Am I too loud? Okay. Rank 2 ID 20, Piraeus Street. And I'm happy to see a priority from Olympus, which is the park on the corner of Piraeus and Olympus. North to Castrina Place, I agree, now that I learned what Sharrow is, because when you leave Olympus and you make a right onto Piraeus and you're traveling north, there is a hill, and you see you're shaking your head. It's blind. You cannot see someone if they're on a bike in the middle of the road. And I want to thank Evan, because we spoke to Evan and we have sent written information. Please get a bike lane on the side. We know the road, Piraeus, is only 31 feet wide. And there is a side that you can probably put 5 feet on the side. So I want to thank you guys that we're going to have a safety feature here on Piraeus. It's not, it's traveled as a frontage road, and I don't remember what page. It might be page 37, I'm not too sure. But it does say project, the mobility element street typology identifies it as suburban collector. I know Dennis brought it up. If anyone travels on Piraeus, it is part of the I-5 corridor, also the I-5 corridor scenic view shed. And it has many constraints. I-5 corridor is west, inland bluffs. It's also an animal corridor east from the Bataquitos Lagoon. There's water running off in basins, drainage area. Some drop-off areas, and I would like it if we could change it to a residential local street, because there's only 6 streets that come off of Piraeus. It's probably 1.5 miles long. Christina goes nowhere because there's no building, but there's a street there, but nobody uses it and it's blocked. So I just hope that we can change it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dennis Caden again. You guys get many visitors? We're feeling kind of lonely out here. You guys are our heroes. If you don't get visitors, it's like, thanks for showing up when you do. I wanted clarity. The gentleman there, Jose? Roberto, sorry. You said that on the sidewalk on Saxony going from La Costa Avenue, 1,000 feet south. And then, and you said it doesn't need to go further because this sidewalk continues, but there is no sidewalk on Saxony at all. There is intermittent sidewalks on Saxony south of Leucadia Boulevard, but all the way to like Encinitas Boulevard, it's sporadic. There's no sidewalk. So, you know, I mean, to prioritize it, it's the sidewalk to nowhere, or it's the sidewalk to Quail Hollow. And because Quail Hollow was more recent, it has a sidewalk, but there's no, what is that?
Yeah,
That's
Dennis,
drainage, right?
I can kind of speak to this one. So, yeah, one of the top 10 projects is the connector basically from where we're looking on Saxony North to La Costa. So there is this kind of sidewalk to nowhere that you're referencing here on Saxony. So that project in the top 10 is to connect it up to La Costa. There is another project farther down in the rankings, but it's in the top 35 to build the sidewalk on Saxony, all the way down to, I believe it's Leucadia.
Does that sidewalk go, that you just showed us, does that go from all the way to Quail Hollow?
No, it does not. So the proposed, one second, I'll try to find it here. Okay, so here, Project 8. So this one, when coupled with the other project, I'm not sure what number it was, in the top 10, would build a sidewalk along Saxony all the way from La Costa to Leucadia. So they are two separate projects.
Okay, all right, I just wanted clarity because I didn't see a sidewalk.
And going back to my previous point is not because they're two separate projects means that they have to be built separately. They were identified through the ATP as separate projects. But when you're looking for funding, if you want to go for an ATP type of project, like the active transportation, this is building a gap. You would get more points if you go the whole way because you're building connections. So not just because they're identified here as separate projects doesn't mean that they need to go in and be built by different projects.
Glenn, to your point about funding, is there a way the city could make it more feasible for when a developer is building, especially the R30s, because they severely impact the surrounding neighborhoods, that their infrastructure fees must be used that, like, within the immediate effect of the neighborhood it's affecting, rather than, the project in Leucadia, but they use it to build something over in Olivenane. And I like Olivenane, but I just mean keep it specific to that project, neighborhood. That would help. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to make a quick comment on the impact fees. I'm not really clear on how they work, so I can't say one thing or another on that. I don't know if anybody else on our commission is conversant enough to actually address that properly. I would suggest that you do talk with the city, perhaps Abe about that, or Evan about the how development impact fees are assessed and then also distributed. We don't, I think I'm speaking for all the other commissioners, and I don't think we really have the knowledge for that.
This is Commissioner Johnson. My comment is that the impact fees are usually assessed once the project is completed, rather than upfront. Okay, and then they're spent wherever in the city needs the money, not necessarily in that area. I've seen some discussions someplace on shouldn't the impact fees be spent in the area where they're collected from, but I haven't seen anything that says that's going to happen.
That's really not an issue for us to discuss at this moment, I don't believe. Okay. Again, Evan, Roberto, thank you very much for the presentation, and we look forward to moving on. It's if you don't have a plan, your plan is failure. So we're moving in the right direction, slowly but surely. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
Okay, so next on our, I want to thank you guys for coming in and discussing and sharing your thoughts. Next action item is engineering traffic survey on North Vulcan Avenue. The recommended action is to approve staff recommendation.
Testing. Okay, cool. How do you do the full screen slideshow? Yeah. Oh, sorry. Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Ian Barr. I'm Associate Traffic Engineer here with the city, and I will be talking about item 7A, which is the Vulcan speed limit item. So here's a little site map. So we did a speed survey along Vulcan Avenue. This is north of Leucadia Boulevard, between Leucadia and La Costa. And the goal was to see if we can lower this segment speed limit to match the southern portion, which is 30 miles an hour. Currently north of Leucadia, it's 35. And we conducted our speed survey a little bit north of Sanford Street, so a little bit north of where that park is. We wanted to make sure we weren't by any dips or bumps or any kind of stop signs, to make sure that the free flow speed was not hindered in any way. So I took a little snapshot of the speed survey. So at the top, it kind of goes over the details about it, the location, the date, the time, the weather, and then the MUTCD states that we need to, I guess, shoot at least 100 vehicles for a speed survey. So each X represents a vehicle, and then on that left column, that's the miles per hour. So we clocked about 105 or so vehicles, and we found that the 85th percentile speed along this segment of Vulcan was 33. And for those that don't know, when someone says 85th percentile speed, just to clarify, it just means that it's the speed at which 85% of the vehicles are traveling at or below. So in this case, it was 33. So according to the MUTCD, the posted speed may be reduced by 5 miles per hour from the nearest 5 mile per hour increment of that 85th percentile speed. So as shown in the previous slide, the 85th was 33. So then we round it to the nearest 5, which is 35. And then if justified, we do have that option to lower it down to 30. So we kind of evaluated this road. We looked at the ped and bike volumes. We noticed that there was a lack of ped facilities on that east side. And with now the Sharrows along Vulcan, we wanted to minimize the speed difference between the vehicles and bikes. So we looked at all those factors and we looked at the collision history, and then we took the speed survey. We did find it justified to lower this segment of Vulcan Avenue, the speed limit to 30 to kind of match that southern portion, and that's what staff recommends. That's it. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Ian. Any questions or comments from the commission?
Thank you, Ian. Just curious on the methodology around why you chose 10:07 in the morning.
Non-peak hour. So when it's like 8 a.m., you get a lot of cars bumper to bumper, and it won't accurately reflect the speed. So we do it when it's like the most accurate, a non-peak period where you get cars spaced every few hundred feet. So it's more accurate.
Thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Hansberger?
Thank you. Thank you so much for doing this study. This is greatly needed in this stretch of Vulcan. As you noted, there is no safe pedestrian access along that road. And I appreciate that you're taking every action to lower the speed limit, which is greatly needed. I will say I'm just sad that the 85th percentile was not at 32 instead of 33, because then I think we could have rounded down to 30 and rounded down to 25. But I do appreciate your hard work, and thank you. I'm in full support of reducing the speed on this stretch of Vulcan.
Any other commissioners?
Commissioner Johnson here. That's excellent news, Evan. You've done a good job for us. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. Jim, Harold, any comments?
I'll also echo the thanks, and I think you did good work. I agree with lowering the speed limit. I also agree with Vice Chair Hansberger's recommendation or suggestion that would be nice is 25.
Commissioner
you.
Sandifer?
Thank you. Yeah, I'll join in on the bandwagon here in support of this recommendation, and also echo, maybe in the future you can come back and we can go for 25.
I also, Ian, thanks for doing this, and I think it's a great idea to lower the speed limit to 30. It's more consistent with the Vulcan south of Leucadia Boulevard. It also mirrors the 30 miles an hour on Coast Highway through the streetscape area. So hopefully people will be realizing that it's not any quicker. They can't drive any faster on one street compared to the other. I think this is definitely the good direction to go in. I fully support this. Again, June, you're right. I wish it was 32 miles an hour. But also, I do want to make a comment that we had an opportunity to lower the speed limit to 25 miles an hour on this stretch of road if we had declassified the street and removed it from the state highway map, because this street meets the standards for a residential and/or business road, which would allow us a prima facie speed limit of 25. That the city staff had put together a plan on how to do this, and unfortunately, it hasn't gone to the council. But I think it's a missed opportunity that we could have gotten down to 25 completely. But I am totally in favor of this, and I'll entertain a motion to approve this, because this goes to the city council with our approval or disapproval, but it definitely goes to the city council. So I'll entertain a motion to adopt a staff recommendation.
I'll
move
move
to
that.
approve.
Commissioner Johnson?
I'll second.
And I just have I wanted to make one quick comment, just in response to you, because I love that you bring this up every single time, that we could have lowered the speed limit along Vulcan, and I am all in support of lowering the speed limit along Vulcan, but the rationale of not adopting it, not changing the designation of that street, was because Vulcan is in such desperate need of so many other improvements, and if we change that, we cannot, not we, but you, the city cannot apply for grant funding along that stretch of Vulcan. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that is the rationale of why that street was not redesignated, is because we are in hopes, actually currently, of getting grant funding to put a pedestrian and trail along there, and if we change the designation, they cannot apply for grants. So I just wanted to clarify, but I am in support of the 25, and I appreciate that this is how we're getting there. And I second the motion.
Okay, so we'll take a vote. We'll just do it.
All together?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And not in favor? Let the record show there was no unfavorable votes. Okay, thank you, Ian. Next item is downtown Encinitas parking enhancements. The recommended action is to approve the staff recommendation. So we'll hear from Abe.
Good evening, Mobility and Traffic Safety Commission. Chair Von Neumann, a Bandigan City Traffic Engineer. This has been an item that I'm not sure if we had a direction from Commission or Council. This is one of the staff-initiated items starting from, I guess, 2 years ago, where COVID hit and we had this downtown sidewalk dining, on-street dining thing get added to downtown. We were looking into opportunities to add parking in downtown. At that point, there were conversations about using some off-street parking, some contracts that the city had with some properties for off-street parking to be able to allow public to use those parking spaces. That made us think about what opportunities do we have to improve parking in downtown. What we did, we surveyed the streets around downtown area to see which streets does have the width to allow us do perpendicular parking or angled parking, knowing the fact that when you convert parallel parking for each space, you usually need around 20 feet, 25 feet, depending on the layout and geometry of the road. If you convert that to perpendicular or 45-degree angled, you'll get about 30, 40, 50%, depending on how if you do perpendicular, you get around 50%, double. If you do 45-degree, you'll get about 30, 40% increased. So we checked these streets and we identified some roadways in downtown area. This is the streets that we evaluated, that the width on these roads did allow us to convert one side at least of the on-street parallel parking to a 45-degree angled parking. And with that, it would increase our parking. I mean, these are not very long blocks. These are shorter blocks. Some of them are, I think, 300 feet. Some are like the standard 440. It's around 300 to 500 feet. But conversion of the existing parallel parking to 45-degree angled would give us, our estimate shows about, I think, additional 50, 60 parking spaces, which is not too many, but in downtown area, 50, 60 is a lot, I think. And with the, I guess, the cost benefit is, the cost of this project will not really be very huge. It's just some striping work, some minor signage, I guess. We went off of our planning, our development services department guidelines for 45-degree angled parking, which asks for 18.5 feet in depth for 45-degree angled. And the detailed design is not available now. We will take this to council considering the impact in downtown area. So the CAD drawing is not available. There are a lot of driveways and alleys that we cannot have diagonal parking in front of them. We are evaluating and reviewing them one by one to make sure sight distance is not impacted, to make sure maneuvering inside and outside of these driveways and alleys are not impacted. There is a sample, so this is a sample of existing cross-section in most of these the streets in downtown that are wide enough to accommodate, and this is how we're converting them. Let me zoom out a little so you can see both of them together. So basically, the lanes are becoming narrower and the two lanes are getting closer to each other. Friction is increased, and we're doing a angled parking on one side. How we select angled, the side that will get angled parking, we try to optimize different things, the number of alleys that exist, the number of driveways, basically getting best bang for the buck, how many extra parking spaces we can achieve by choosing which side this goes. And obviously we cannot go back and forth between different sides of the road. If once we choose one side, it has to, the diagonal parking has to stay on that side because the transition would be hard at the intersection. So we would have to look at the corridor and see how we can optimize the use of the on-street pavement for diagonal parking. And this is a table showing the list of the street segments that their current width, their limits from where to where, what the existing parking capacity is, and how many potential spaces we can gain. This is a sample on 3rd Street between A and B. And as you can see, currently the center line is, I guess, faded, but you should be able to see the existing center line, how it is right now, and the existing parallel parking and how it would be converted to perpendicular. We check none of these streets are on our active transportation plan for bike lanes. There might be room to fit a bike lane if we wanted to compare these, but as I said, none of these are classified. So if we go really tight, we can fit a bike lane in the door zone area. Considering the speed on these roads and the low volume, most cities in these areas, in their downtown low volume streets, not the main downtown streets, but the side streets of downtown, sharrows work just fine, bike boulevards, they have facilities without a dedicated bike lane. And the fact that I said these were not classified as Class 2 bikeways in our active transportation plan, we didn't feel the need to sacrifice, I guess, this additional parking space in lieu of adding bike lanes. But full disclosure, if you have a 50-footer road, it is possible to add bike lanes on these streets without improving parking. So it was either or, but I said we thought increased parking would be a better option. E101 Encinitas Downtown Main Street Association, we did contact them. They're communicating this with the businesses in the downtown area. We requested feedback and input. It was short notice, but the fact that this is going to council in about 2 months, there will be ample time that we can sit with them if they have any concerns or inputs, and even our residents if they want to provide input. The reason this is here tonight is to obviously get Commission's blessing, and if there is any information, any feedback, any input, as usual, you want to be included in the council report, I'll be happy to receive your input and feedback and add it to the report. With that, I'm open to questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Abe. So you're looking for us to recommend approval of this plan?
Yes, regular, review and provide feedback to staff, because, this will go to council for council's approval or denial. The fact that it's in downtown and, changing the use of the street usually requires council approval.
Okay. Commissioners, any comments?
Yes.
We'll start down at the end. Mr. Wong.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Abe, for this presentation.
Jim, can you push your button?
Sorry, I pressed it twice. Sorry, thank you, Abe, for this presentation. I know you put a lot of analysis into it, but I'll say right off, I'm totally opposed to it because it's entirely car-centric. It improves parking, making essentially the cost of car driving less. Parking is like induced demand for freeway lanes. There will never be enough. They'll always say we want more. Part of the objective of our CAP is to reduce driving and to encourage mode shift. That was also an objective of our MIP as demonstrated by Evan and Roberto. So not only does it decrease the cost, and when I say cost, it's the economy's term of cost in terms of not just monetary cost, but effort and strain in driving, but also has a converse implication of increasing the cost of biking because narrow lanes makes the lanes more dangerous, especially diagonal parking makes it worse because drivers often don't look around. It's hard for them to look around. They just back out. It makes it harder to see bikes. The lane's narrower, and it's just not safe for bikes. So it completely does the opposite of what the CAP suggests and what the MAP objective is. So especially with the increase of e-bikes, we ought to be paying more attention to bicycle infrastructure, not car infrastructure. So that's at least 2 points against the climate action plan, the MAP, increase the bikes. So as you pointed out, a 17-foot traffic lane is plenty enough space for putting in a, say, 6-foot bike lane, as long as you don't have diagonal parking. That parking space can easily be used for bike parking, which there's an insufficient amount of in downtown. There are not enough bike parking spaces, especially for the increased number of e-bikes. So bikers have to just lock to signposts or whatever, find something to lock to. So I'd say that we should be increasing the bike infrastructure, not car infrastructure. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Standifer, we're just going to go down the road here.
Thank you. And thank you for the presentation. I also have concerns about creating infrastructure that is more car-centric as opposed to other modes of transportation that we would like to see supported here in the city. I can imagine that the Downtown Association would like to see more parking. Parking is a problem downtown if you happen to drive a car there at almost any time of the day or the evening. But I like Commissioner Wong, will not be able to support the recommendation.
Commissioner Johnson?
My concern also is the bicycles. As we're trying to move over to other modes of transportation, I see we're giving more and more pavement to these dinosaur automobiles. I'd like to see more emphasis on support for foot traffic and bicycle traffic. You know, we have to designate one route through Encinitas as a north-south preferred bicycle route, but I don't think this street is it.
Commissioner Gross?
Yeah, just to reflect what I think everyone said, you know, this is a very much a car-centric plan, and you know, with all the data that we just saw on the ATP plan, safety being such a big concern, I didn't see anything in this report reflecting safety, and I think it's unequivocally understood that perpendicular parking is more dangerous to pedestrians and bicyclists, and so the lack of focus there, I think, is pretty surprising for the amount of proposed perpendicular parking. So yeah, I don't know if anything was done in that sense, but you're definitely creating a more unsafe atmosphere with perpendicular parking.
Commissioner Hansberger?
Thank you for the plan. I appreciate seeing it, and I know a lot of time went into it. It's my understanding that the reason you took this on is because the businesses downtown asked to improve parking, that there's not enough parking and that they want more parking. So that I completely understand where this is coming from. But I think that maybe one of the ways, as was mentioned earlier, is that currently there's not enough bike parking. So if we could provide more parking for our current e-bike and cyclists that are wanting to come downtown in that mode, that would then free up the current parking spaces that we do have. And keeping it parallel so that it is safer for the bikes would be great. So maybe instead of focusing on the funding for restriping, maybe we could focus on more bike parking, which would in turn have the same effect for the businesses providing more parking, because we would just get more people on bikes down there, and that would free up the parking for people that don't ride their bicycles down there. You know, we do have quite a lot of people that don't have the ability to cycle or into town, but I think that providing more parking for our current bikes would be a great solution, which these other commissioners had pointed out. So that would be my thought. That way we are also helping the businesses get more people downtown.
Thank you. The comments that I have, well, first of all, I was kind of surprised to see this come up on our agenda, because I don't remember this topic, but Dave, you said it was maybe like a couple of years ago that it came up, so maybe it's just a bad memory. I also agree that this is very car-centric in its approach. It's doesn't do anything to promote mode shift, doesn't do anything to make it safer for bikes, doesn't do anything to make it safer for pedestrians. And I also think, I think the jury is out about whether removal of parking spaces, how it affects businesses. I think it depends on certain communities and things. I think there are a number of communities down in San Diego that are dealing with this issue. You know, merchants saying that taking parking spaces away from them hurts their business. Other people saying, oh, it's actually helped. So, you know, it's a judgment call, I think. But for Encinitas, which is really trying to promote mode shift, climate action plan, and everything, doing something that is just car-centric is really, really going in the wrong direction. I also want to add to Commissioner Hansberger's comments about bike parking. Like right now, the only bike parking anywhere is having to chain your bike up to a post, a tree, or something like that. I don't know how many bike lockers there are, but you can put a couple of bike locker boxes in some of these parking spots where people can actually park their bike out of the weather and don't have to worry about someone coming along and cutting the chain with bolt cutters. And the other issue that I have is, where's the handicap parking? There's nothing designated on here that's added, any handicap parking is added or not, but I think throughout the downtown area, handicap parking access is definitely at a minimum. And I don't know how many spots how many parking spots were taken away because of the street side dining and all. But I don't think pushing parking into the neighborhood is really benefiting the people in the neighborhood either. And then, doing stuff like this, your time and everything, it takes time and energy and money to do this. And my first thought is, we have a big safety issue, which is, a crossing down on 101 at the border of Sauna Beach and Encinitas Boulevard. The Coast Highway, and we should be trying to focus on how to get safe pedestrian crossing across the Coast Highway rather than trying to figure out where to park more automobiles. So, and then also, I've never heard any discussion about, is it going to be paid parking or not paid parking? I'm not advocating for either one, but that has to also come in any discussion about parking. I don't think Encinitas charges anywhere for parking at this time. So I think it's a little premature. I personally don't have enough information. I want to hear what the businesses say before I can make a judgment. But those are just my thoughts. And so I think Commissioner Hunsberg?
Sorry, I just had one more comment. I wanted to tag on to what you had said, because I think another factor that we have not thought about is how this does impact the residents. And I know that Abe was mentioning they were going to make sure that it wasn't blocking alleys and driveways, but I do also worry that, number one, we don't have anybody from these neighborhoods tonight at this meeting. Maybe they weren't aware that this was on the agenda. I don't know if they were notified that this could be a change that was coming to their neighborhood. I know we now have a policy of notifying neighbors if a stop sign or something is going to come to their neighborhood, but maybe they aren't aware because, as you just pointed out, this is going to impact their neighborhoods quite a bit. It's going to impact density of parking in front of their houses. It is also going to impact egress and to their property. And, I'm just concerned that we aren't taking that into consideration either.
Yeah, we did get one letter on this item from the community. And I think this person was basically saying many of the same things that we on us commissioners were actually saying also. So I don't know what action you want us to take, but I think it's very clear that we're not very excited about this. And
Sure.
I don't know, why does it have to go? Why is it going to the council in January? It seems awfully hurried.
No, so let me clarify a few things, the questions I heard, and we'll talk about the next steps. One is I heard perpendicular. This is, the current proposal is 45-degree angle, so it will not be perpendicular to the curb. The second is, I'm not sure where we heard in the map, because I heard two of the commissioners say angled parking and perpendicular parking are unsafe for bicyclists. So I'm not sure what the basis of that is. Is that because of the limited view from the mirror? Because we have angled parking right now in a lot of different areas of downtown, and they're, I guess, everywhere. We are doing back-in parking with the streetscape, but until the streetscape, most of the angled parking spaces that everywhere in the county we had were head-ins, and they're still head-ins. I don't think there is any kind of a specific study that shows angled parkings are unsafe in comparison. Obviously, the attention that a driver has to make when heading out is a little bit more, I guess, compared to a parallel parking. I guess missing a bicyclist is always a possibility. The fact that the lanes are pretty wide, we're not backing into a 10-footer lane, so the lanes are pretty wide. And so, yeah, I just didn't want on record this to remain that angled parking is unsafe in any way for bicyclists. Second is, as mentioned, this might look as a car-centric project. The fact that we are a active transportation friendly and I guess proactive city does not mean that we should not do any car-centric, but there is still a mode of transportation that carry like 97% of our traffic. So this project will have some benefits for our bicyclists. A relatively wide lane right now that does not have sharrows and does not clarify for a cyclist where they should ride. A 17-footer lane, as you remember, most drivers would expect the bicyclists to stay by the door zone and vacant the lane for them because of lack of marking and lack of designation. The existing scenario doesn't have a bike lane. Now, if we convert that to a bike lane, that's one thing, but there are two caveats. One is our active transportation plan does not call for a bike lane. And second is that eliminated friction between bicyclists and vehicles will increase the speed on these roads. If you separate them from each other, cars don't need to stay behind the bicyclist. And lastly, we're moving the bicyclists in the door zone, which I know Commission doesn't want. We would have to put them in the door zone because we don't have room for buffers, or, I mean, we might have room for like a 2-footer maybe if we go down to a 5-footer bicyclist, and then we'll be putting them by a 10-footer lane. I mean, it's not, I guess, technically incorrect, but it's not preferred. So it's not like there is a huge amount of space to add a buffered bike lane, not on the ATP, eliminating the friction that would increase the speed. And compared to existing scenario, as said, this proposed scenario, we will include the sharrows with it. So a 12-footer lane, 11.5-footer lane will have a sharrow in the middle of the lane that would clarify for the bicyclists that this is a bike boulevard now, they're allowed to use it. Comment about handicap parking. I said the design is not finalized. We will work with our ADA team in our risk management to see how many ADA parking spaces. In downtown, I think we have 1 per block on 101. I'm not sure we want to have the exact same amount, but if that's the direction, we will incorporate the ADA parking specifications, and we'll designate 1 or 2 per block on each side for ADA. Bike parking, we did discuss this, not shown on the plan, but multiple areas in these roadway segments where there is an alley, where there is a driveway that we don't have enough room to create a parking space. We talked about creating bike parking for those leftover spaces that are not large enough in those triangular. So like a very simple location, like right after B, as you can see, the entrance, this is not large enough to create a parking area for the bike, but this is close to the beach, so we can convert this to a bike parking, this space that will not be in the path of vehicles turning right. This can be converted to a bike parking. So we did have these conversations, but these are not incorporated into the plan, as this is just a concept at this point. What other notes I took about paid, unpaid? During my 4.5 years here, this has never been discussed, but I do know the history of the city. The topic of paid parking has come up multiple times, and City Council has not been receptive of the idea to even for parking demand management. We all know it would be effective. Obviously, for enforcement, we have staffing concerns. We have to have resources to cover how even the 2-hour limited parking that we have can't be properly enforced. That's not the case. We're not really commenting on creating a paid parking situation. With regards to impact on the community, as said, the businesses have been notified, but very recently, tonight's meeting is exactly how it's going forward. It's to hear your thoughts, hear your input, and we will communicate with the residents, we will communicate with the businesses, And if this is going to council, if we get to a point that we feel like we can have a positive impact on the city, we make sure that we receive all the input that we need to receive and the message is communicated to public before this is taken to council. With that, Chair, I am totally fine with any kind of motion, any kind of comment from the commission. I just want commission to have the full picture, and yeah, with that, I'm open to any further questions or your motion, if you like.
I have one comment right off the bat. Why are we doing 12-foot wide travel lanes? I thought the goal of the city was to have 10-foot wide travel lanes. So that's just a comment that doesn't need a response. But anytime I see 12-foot travel lanes, I'm going, well, wait a minute. This goes against what the city has said that it wants to do, which is reduce the width of travel lanes. So that's just my comment. Commissioners, any other comments?
Yes.
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yeah. I haven't seen really a need for more parking, and I think if a study is necessary to justify the need for more parking, then that should be done first anyway. And I do recall quite a time back when I was living in Santa Monica, they converted one of the streets into the 3rd Street pedestrian mall, and as part of that project, they built a nearby parking structure, I think 3 stories, to accommodate the parking that they'd lost and to satisfy the merchants. And near the transit center, there may be a need for such parking, and of course, it'll be paid for Ace Parking or something, I think might get the franchise. But I think we want to study alternatives for parking rather than trying to take more pavement for these 3,000-pound behemoth dinosaurs.
Commissioner Wong?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I want to address a few of your responses. Abe, thank you for your thoughts on that. First of all, there's never going to be enough parking because it's like induced demand. If you ask anyone, there's not enough parking. We need more parking. That's always going to be the answer, especially for businesses. As far as diagonal parking, I have decades of experience biking, and I don't feel safe behind diagonal parking. Part of the objective of the CAP is mode shift. That means converting people from cars to riding bikes. So those would be new cyclists. So if I don't feel safe behind diagonal parking, I don't expect anyone else to, especially new riders. Part of the reason why it's not safe, doesn't feel safe, is that I can't see the driver can't see me, so they're essentially driving by braille. They back out and see whether they see something, but it's much harder to see something like that, because they have to turn their head a lot, as opposed to looking in the rearview mirror. As far as the Sherrills, I don't think either cyclists or drivers like Sherrills. Drivers get really frustrated behind a bike. They often won't follow a bike. They'll pass, even if there's a double line, they'll pass, whether it's safe or not. They won't follow a bike, and bikes don't like it when cars follow them. So Sherrills are not a good compromise. They are not satisfactory at all. So using Sherrills in diagonal parking is bad. So this is bad on several points: mode shift, safety, and neighborhood character. Thank you.
Any other commissioners? Well, okay, so I do want to, since it was, the recommended action is to recommend to City Council a restriping plan. I think that is our what we need to state on, and so I don't know what kind of motion. Does someone have a motion to that effect?
Well, not do this plan. I don't know how you make a motion that we don't like this plan.
Commissioner Wong, your motion is to not recommend this plan?
Correct.
Do we have a second? I'll second. So we'll have a vote. Okay, so all in favor of not recommending this plan?
Aye.
Aye. Against? All right, let the record show there were no against. So, Abe, thank you very much, and please share some of our comments with the city council.
Sure.
When they were debating this. Okay, so next we have city traffic engineer report, safety and mobility projects. And Abe, before we get into this, I do want to make a quick comment, and that is, I don't understand why the follow-up log was combined with this. I think it's confusing. And if I have some other notes here.
So reviewing the last 2-3 sessions that we went with the current format, and I listened to a few of our conversations, I felt there's a lot of redundancy, and follow-up log was kind of turning into this whole new format. So let me open the new version. I felt like we were going toward this, that from now on, we'll have this new, where is the engineer's update? This new format that will have the completed ones, that will have the ongoing ones, and we'll have the ones that are TBD or have a future date. The ones that have a TBD or have a future date will be basically the items that were sitting on the log waiting for us to, I guess, get to them. I think this is cleaner. We can do a better job of sorting them. They're currently in not a sorted format, but what we can do, when I thought about it more, was the completed piece we can leave there, but the top part, which is the ongoing and I guess alive items, and then those can be sorted, and then we can have a middle part or take it to the bottom. Those are the ones that we haven't yet got to them, and those are the items that will come in the future. Which is basically replacing the log. Because when I was creating this list and opting, I noticed that there are a lot of stuff that are in here, and they're also on the log. So about 2/3 of the items were redundant, really. But again, this is still a live thing. We're morphing it based on our needs.
Abe, can I ask you to just make the font a skosh bigger?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this way, as you remember, you suggested we don't need to go through each item line by line, and if the commissioners have a question or want an update about one of the items, I can provide. We are busy with our 4 or 5 active projects. We got approval from council for our 4 signal modification projects, the 4 left turns, protected left turns, protected premises that are being added at the 4 locations, Vulcan and Leucadia, Vulcan and Encinitas Boulevard, Leucadia and Quail, and the Santa Fe at the hospital. Those 4 locations will be getting protected left turn phasing and new signals. That plan was approved by, that contract was approved by council 2 weeks ago. We're starting construction in December. The Z crossing on El Camino Real was approved last week. That one, we are going to construction in December. The cycle track was approved last week, the phase 2 project. That one, we're going out to construction in December. And also our citywide 9 corridors, 9 or 7 corridors, LED upgrades. We're converting our old sodium lights to high efficiency LED lights. That contract is also approved, construction to start in December. So we have a few projects that are ongoing. We're working on the commission-approved walkway on Manchester at the intersection of Manchester and San Leo by the Nature Center. What else is very active? These are the 5-6 active projects that we have that are going into construction. And Ian recently finished a walkway on La Costa, west of Vulcan, between the bridge and Vulcan. That one was recently finished.
Chair, I have some comments on the format, and you have a chance.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Abe. I know you put a lot of work into this log, but I'm also comparing the logs from August and September. I'm also basing some of my comments on the work plan from the Environmental Commission, which I think is managed pretty well, as Commissioner or Vice Chair Hansberger can testify, that it makes the tracking and recording of what happens on our projects much easier. For one thing, I noticed the item number disappeared. The item number makes it much easier to track what happens to the project. So between August and September, for instance, then 4 items disappeared, number 57, 59, 60, and 61. They just disappeared. But not having a number makes it hard to track. It's hard to see that it disappeared. I don't know whether that was intent or not, but that's what happens. And in the new project list, there are no numbers at all. So I'm suggesting that each item, when it appears, should be assigned a number permanently and never disappears. The other thing that happens in the work plan for the EEC is that there's a comment field that is updated whenever there's action on that item with a date and just a one-line description of what happened. You know, we reviewed it, we rejected it, we approved it, something like that. And that makes the tracking of what happens to each item much easier. Whereas now, it's really impossible to do that because there's no item number, they disappeared, and the date now has gotten even more vague. So having the comment and tracking would be improved a lot. Two simple fields, item number, and comment field, and no deletions.
The comments that you mentioned, the comments each month replace the previous comment, or no, they get added
They get
back
added.
to back? So it gets longer and longer.
August 2022, then September something happens, that's just added. It's just one date and one line, so it's very brief, but just an update of what happens. You can go take a look at the Environmental Commission work plan and see examples there.
I think I'll add a little more to what Commissioner Wong was saying, that it's also I personally like the follow-up log and the project list separate documents. The follow-up log, as far as my understanding and my history of watching the commission work and everything, is the follow-up log is usually commissioner-initiated ideas or responding to input from residents. And the other sheet, the projects that were under the city traffic engineer report were other things. Yes, there are some things that are very similar, but I do believe they should be separate documents. And it is important to have the numbers, and so the numbers remain the same, specific dates about when it was initiated and by, and who it was. Was it by the commission? Was it by staff? Was it by the city? Things like that. I think it's really important. And when I was looking at this, I was trying to pick up, I looked at September's follow-up log, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items on the follow-up log that did not make it to the commission project list and updates that is presented this evening. One of which is citywide e-bike policy. Another one is crosswalk evaluation at La Casa and Highway 101. Another one is parking evaluation on Vulcan. Another one is bike lane on South El Camino Real at Manchester. That's going west toward the freeway and the coast. Another one is Vulcan edge of road enhancement. So they disappeared off of this. Also missing is was number 61 from the follow-up log from June 13th, 22, evaluating crosswalks at Harbaugh Trails, which is the border between Solana Beach and Encinitas. And also another one that's missing is for a project that did not come from our commission, but came from CIP was the sidewalk on South Coast Highway at Tabletops, South Cardiff Beach. And so that's, that should be on the citywide project list. Even though it didn't come from us, it didn't come from you, it came from CIP. So I do believe they should be different formats and all, but those are my opinions. And it's specifically about this, there is let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think number 8 on the current list that we're looking at was Olive Crest and Morning Sun crosswalks at Rancho Santa Fe. It says project completed. What was done? Because currently, right now, there is no crosswalk across Rancho Santa Fe at Morning Sun. There is a crosswalk from the north side of Morning Sun to the south, from the north side to the south side, east of Rancho Santa Fe Road. And there is one crosswalk at Olive Crest, east to west, going across Rancho Santa Fe Road. So I'm not quite sure if project completed is accurate, and if it is, then it should go underneath the completed sign. So I know this seems like a lot of administrivia. It's a term I like to use, but I think it is important to be able to track and keep track of things that are going on. And those are my comments. So I don't know if other members of the commission support that, keeping them separate. I don't know.
Yes, let me just say I agree with you that there should be a separate login project list, and also would like to see that the projects that disappeared, I want to know what happened to them and want them to reappear. That is the advantage of having permanent numbers.
Yeah.
Thank you.
On the completed ones, it would be helpful to me if a completion date was provided so that we can know when the champagne corks got pulled.
Any other comments?
Well, I agree. I'd like it numbered, and I'd like it to be. I really did like our format in the Environmental Commission. So I don't know if maybe we could reach out to whoever manages that document and and just ask her to maybe forward Abe a copy. That might be helpful, because that is a really well-managed document that makes it clear. So I would appreciate some clarity too, and I support my fellow commissioners. I have some other comments on the log, but I don't want to jump in until we're done with this discussion. I mean, I just have some questions and comments and.
Go ahead, I think.
Okay, so first off, Abe, I wanted to thank you and the city so much for all the improvements that got completed. I see that you have Vulcan Avenue edge enhancements south of La Costa Avenue. That got completed, which is really great, and that's right along the edge, and it made it's not spectacular, but it is so much better. I can run and walk and get to La Costa Avenue, so I appreciate that you made that happen. I know that was a long time coming, so thank you for that. The other thing I'd like to thank staff for was getting along La Costa next to the bridge, there's a new retaining wall was built and a path was put in there. So now literally we can use the crosswalk that you put in, thank you, across, I think it's at the end of Andrew. Thank you. I feel safe crossing there. I can now there's cars parked there, but I can get to that kind of DG parking, and I can safely get to La Costa and to cross the bridge, and then I can get to the beach. So, and I know a lot of residents are using that because we have been fenced off, and not to say this too loudly, but I used to cross the tracks all the time there, but now that I have this safe access, I will go down Andrew, and I don't go down and cross, I go there, so thank you. I just wanted to acknowledge that got done since we've seen you last. So that was point number 1. Sorry, I've got 5. I would like to make an announcement that I see on here, it's the Hygeia roundabout. No, sorry, I'm lying. It's the roundabout on Eolas, improving Andrew and Eolas. I just wanted to make announcement to anybody that's interested that tomorrow at 4 o'clock, neighbors and city council members, and I think some staff engineers are meeting at that roundabout to discuss potential beautification. So I was notified, and I let some of my neighbors know, but if anybody else would be there, I think, will you be there, Abe? Or?
Yes.
Yes, and that's tomorrow at 4 o'clock at that roundabout, if anybody's interested in providing input. That was that one. I now just have questions for you, and then I'll list them, and then would you mind responding after I do them all? Is that okay?
Sure.
Thank you. So, I would like an update on the path along Vulcan, because I know that grants were written, and I'm just wondering where the status is on that. So I did hear a rumor that maybe one wasn't funded, and now we're going after different funding, so I just would like a update on that. I also wanted to know, is the path by the Nature Center in Cardiff funded? Because it seems like that was just brought here, and now it already has funding and it's getting built, so I just wanted to check in on that. I mean, that's great news, but it just seems awfully fast, so I wasn't sure. And then my last one is that I emailed you about this, that the signal on Lucadia and Orpheus, right by that Starbucks, is when it turns, it's not a protected left-hand turn lane, and we have a lot of traffic coming out Orpheus and getting onto the freeway there. But we also have a lot of people crossing back and forth to get to Starbucks and that mall. And so I had asked, if possible, when you upgrade the stoplights, if there could be like a delay on the pedestrian crossing, so we could push that, and then it would let the pedestrians go, and then the light would signal for green for the rest of the traffic. And you said that that was coming. I just wanted to double check, is that still going to be one of the stoplights that's getting upgraded? So 3 things. Thank you very much.
Sure. On the number one, our ATP grant to the state, to Sacramento for Vulcan Walkway, it was about $1.3 million. Unfortunately, it didn't make the cut. The second route was applying to Sandag for another ATP. Sandag has its own share of the state money that they can distribute locally in their jurisdiction. We submitted an application. The results on that will come in March or April. So fingers crossed, maybe we get successful this time. We should have a better chance, the fact that it's a localized competition. With regards to the Manchester at San Alejo Cross walkway, from that stop sign intersection to the stairs that go into the Nature Center, that was a quick build funded by council during the budget season last year. So it was included in our budget. It's about $80,000 that we could use. There was a $300,000 quick build fund that was added to our general mobility account that we're utilizing for these quick build type projects. Number 3 was the signal. So we do have a citywide lead pedestrian interval project where on all of our 5960 signals, we secured a grant from Caltrans to upgrade our controllers and our signal system to be able to add this lead pedestrian interval, which is a few seconds of ahead time, I guess, for pedestrians to get into the crosswalk and occupy the crosswalk before vehicles get to their turnings. So that's still on track. We have the funding. We were short-staffed, but now we're fully staffed, so we are getting on these different projects. So that one will happen. It's a little bit behind, but it will happen in 2023 for sure.
Okay, thank you. And Orpheus is on that list?
All of our signals are. That specific signal, Ian, correct me, that signal is ours, right? That's not Caltrans, the Starbucks?
It's ours.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it's... I don't know, sorry. I just
Yeah, because
think
that's
it's
right by
far.
Caltrans. I wanted to show. They have one after on the east, on the off-ramp, but this one is not that close. This is ours. Yeah. Yeah, it is on all of our signals are on that project. So all of them will be upgraded with the newest controller and all the Cadillac stuff that can be added. Chair, I heard the input. The 4 or 5 that were removed, I quickly listened. I probably missed some. But all of the ones that get removed, I never updated commission on the removed item before. If commission wants to get updated on the items that gets removed, I can do that to say, hey, this item was dropped in case commissioners, my assumption is commissioners, as you did, check, and if there is a question, they'll ask. If a project gets completed or gets defunded or gets rejected or gets passed to a different department, out of my hand, for various reasons, they get dropped off that list. If I'm supposed to give update, I can. Like one of the ones that you read was the Vulcan edge enhancement that was removed. As Commissioner Hansberger mentioned, the project was completed, so we just took it off the follow-up log. Or the e-bike policy, it was passed to our Park and Rec department. We're not handling that anymore. It got removed. Or the crosswalk at La Costa, it was agreed that we have to wait for the streetscape to finish. Before that was the scramble crossing at the hotel. We had to wait for the finalization of the streetscape before studying that, so that was dropped. There were two more. I don't. But each one of those, there is a logic behind the removal. I guess I can do that when we remove them. I guess we can keep a line, say, to be removed items or something, and then I update the commission. And if commissioners feel like it's okay to remove that line, just don't want to keep the list long. With regards to bringing back the follow-up log with the, I guess, line items or row numbers, that's totally fine. Or I can add an extra table underneath this table, not to have two separate files. It can be still the traffic engineer's update, but one is the active projects and one can be the commissioner's log, to have a single document, but two separate tables. The second one can have some additional information about who initiated it. With regards to the comments, that middle column that says what the status is, I think it's kind of like what the comment that Commissioner Wong mentioned. If we want to have more information there, I mean, I can see like design at 60%, project to be presented to MPSC in February. Is that what you were after when you said comments, or this is like not enough, you need more information? I know it's missing about who initiated it, but with regards to the status and comments, is that the extent, or you want more?
Yes, thank you, Abe, for asking for the clarification. So let me say, first of all, I think nothing should be deleted from the log, because the log is a record of what's happened. So I understand why you don't want the log to get too long, but the way to solve that or address that is to have a section of the log where you move the lines down to a section where you list projects that were completed in the last year, and then after a year you can move those to another section that they're completed more than a year ago. But they're always there and always accessible. You don't always have to display them. Same thing with comments. You only add to the comments, you don't delete old comments. So that's why if the log is going to be accurate in recording the history, it's always there. You don't delete anything. You don't delete any lines, so you don't drop lines. You just move them to a different section.
I'm going to jump in here, and I think we're spending an inordinate amount of time on how to create a chart or a log or something. I think it's safe to say that do I have the commission's report that we want to keep the follow-up log as it was? Yes. Okay. All right. So we're going to have two different logs. We can figure out what goes in it and everything. I am more than happy to talk with Amanda or whoever prepares this to get the nitty-gritty done. I don't think we need to design it right now from this point. So. But does that, I mean, do you understand what we're trying to get? We're trying to keep our follow-up log, not to delete anything, because we need a history of things. We need to be able to find a history.
Yes, I just want to make sure that's
when a project was done, when it was started, what the problems was. And if there was anything that was on the follow-up log that was eliminated for whatever reason, it should state that on the follow-up log, but it should stay on the follow-up log. And, you know, any concern about it being super long, hey, it's an Excel file, or it should be an Excel file. You can hide whatever rows, columns you want for presentation purposes, but there should be something available for commissioners, for the public to be able to look and say, what was done 5 years ago, what was done last year, what was done last month. So I think that's the point that we're trying to make. There are projects that are being done outside of the purview or an involvement of the Mobility and Public Traffic Safety Commission, and that's important for us to know, just as it's important for us to also know about the land development projects that are coming up. So it's just information, and information is power, and it's important to have. So, you know, let's go back to the two different logs and how they look and everything. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to talk to anybody via email or phone on that. But do you have an understanding of what we want to do or what we want to see?
I mean, because, the past 4.5 years, I've been removing items from the log almost every meeting. This is the first time that I'm hearing it should not be removed. I mean, I guess one indication was our log always had like about 10, 12, 15 items. If I didn't remove, by now it would be like more than 100 items. That should have been an indicator that I am removing. So my understanding was commissioners cross-check, each log with the previous one. If there is a question about, hey, Abe is not, because whenever an item was completed out in the field, I would just take it off, because that follow-up log, as its name entails, means like we want to follow up about something that's active. If it's completed, then there's no need for the commission to follow up about it. But if that's the commissioner's intent to, and it is a record, Commissioner Wong, our traffic commission documents are public records, so they don't get disappeared. The fact that it's removed, it doesn't mean it's removed from the previous meeting. It's still there. It's just, I guess tracing these follow-up logs would show how we completed projects by cross-checking. But I do see your point. We used to go over the traffic log line by line. I guess one reason that these lines were being dropped was because we were going each line every meeting. And if we keep those lines and we keep going over them, every meeting we'll go over 2, 3 additional items. But if it's a matter of, I guess I can't hide them because they have to be printed, so they have to be there. Let me bring back the log as it was like before, and then we'll talk more.
Okay.
The redundancy was what was concerning to me. A lot of items that you feel like is commission's item, they become actual projects. So I would have to update you on the traffic engineer update, and there are still lines in the log. So do I remove them once they become a line on the traffic engineer's update, or I keep both of the lines alive?
Nothing's removed. I think it's safe to say nothing removed.
Okay,
going
but
forward.
we have both of them, but we don't talk about them to save time, and
We
just-
don't have to talk about each
Okay.
line. We can just say, is there any progress on anything, and then go from there.
Okay, well,
But
let me
that's-
bring
that's
it
what
back
we're
next
looking at.
month, and we'll see how.
Okay. Thank you, and thanks for putting up with us.
No
It's like herding cats. But I think in the long run, it'll be beneficial. Anything else, Abe, from traffic engineer report?
I mentioned the active projects, Rancho Santa Fe striping modification. We're still working on it. It's a little behind. We designed a concept, went a little bit forward, but weren't happy with our design, so we're deciding to spend a little bit more time on it. But that is a council-approved project that has funding, so we will bring it to commission hopefully in February to receive commission's input on it. Other than that, the Yellow Circle was discussed. We have another ATP grant for Hygeia Roundabout and pedestrian walkways on Lucadia. We are working with the city of Solana Beach. We hired a consultant. Oh, that was another one that was taken off that list. We hired a consultant. We didn't hire. Solana Beach hired, and we're working with Solana Beach in a co-op to equally fund the consultant's study that will analyze different options of crossing at the border of the two cities to connect the Harbor Park on their side to the state beach. They're checking traffic signal, they're checking RFBs, they're checking road diet, they're checking race crossing, they're checking a lot of different possible chokers. So it's on the studies underway, and we're supposed to work with them, and in the end, the study will be presented to both city councils to see, because the crossing is in our jurisdiction, but I'm sure we all agree that the majority of the users are from Solana Beach, so that's why we're trying to create this joint effort.
Well, that's good to hear. I think I was reading something on that. I forget where, but it might take over a year.
The study itself, no, but
Yeah,
the construction.
but actually getting a crossing might be over a year.
Well, I guess I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but our side, the city of Encinitas side, likes to see an actual pedestrian crossing signal, kind of like Swami's or the new ones at Diana and North Court on Streetscape, an actual mast arm and a push button, and to actively stop vehicles before somebody crossing. On the Solana Beach side, because of the residences they have on the west side of 101 over there, and the aesthetic impact, and the fact that those signal heads will block people's view, and the fact that they will be red and green during off-season, during colder seasons, they feel that's too much of an impact on their residents. So they're more for simpler types of crossing, maybe RFP, maybe a hawk signal. The advantages of a hawk is that it's not activated unless it's pressed.
Right.
So it stays dark, but there is still the aesthetic impact. The hawk is also high, so it would, and then we would need street lighting, and the lighting over there is also another disadvantage to the community's view. And so those are the concerns. So between us and them, and getting to a mutual agreement on on the fact that it's our jurisdiction and we have the ultimate, I guess, decision-making authority, so it can make it complicated. But if it gets to a point where any kind of signal needs to be installed there, hawk or a pedestrian signal, at a minimum, we're looking at a year.
Over a year.
Yeah, just to order signal material right now is 6 to 9 months. Like if you have the money, project approved, design completed,
Right, yeah.
everything done, just like if I hire a contractor today and ask them to order me a signal, it's 6 to 9 months. It's like any other appliance, I guess. If you go to Best Buy, want to buy a refrigerator, it's like 6 to 9 months. So it's like everything else.
Well, I see a lot of people running across that road right now, and I
We
can't
did do a
imagine what
survey.
it's going to look like in a year.
No, we did do a survey. I think the number was pretty high. I think during a full weekend, if I'm not mistaken, in the 3-year, it was in summer, but during a 3-year window that we collected data, I think it was close to 400, if I'm not mistaken, pedestrians crossing.
Yeah, that should be a priority for the city, is all I'm going to say. Okay, thank you.
I have one more. Sorry.
Go ahead. Oh,
Pardon
no.
me.
Yeah.
Abe, you just mentioned the roundabout at Hygeia, that there's an ATP grant. Is that still pending, or has that been, that's pending?
It's the same as the Vulcan one. So they are, I guess, competing with each other too.
Well, let's hope we get one of them.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so that was a lot. Thank you, everybody, for listening and putting in your thoughts. Development projects review, thank you for providing this list. I don't know if commissioners have any comments about this list. I think it's interesting that the 458 unit Quail Meadows project, is it 400? Yeah, 485. I guess that's been postponed by the, not quite sure on that. But anyway, so thank you for that list. Fun stuff coming. So now we get to the part of the agenda where we get to Commissioner Corner. And go ahead, I'm sorry. Does anybody have anything for Commissioner Corner before I do my part? No? Commissioner Standifer.
Thank you. This is my second meeting, so I am learning a lot here, and I appreciate all of the information that comes forward. I did want to make a pitch to have that information I think we requested, or discussion that we requested at the last meeting regarding an e-bike policy. I have heard from some of my constituents out in my area of Eliminhain regarding this, and there is a great deal of concern about e-bikes and their use and abuse, and concerns for safety, both for e-bikers, regular bikers, and vehicular traffic. So I would like to see that come back.
Okay. Was that on our follow-up log? Do you remember? E-bike policy?
Yes, e-bike policy was on our follow-up log. We had
Okay.
2 meetings with our Park and Rec department and our sheriff's office a year and a half ago. And at some point, this task was passed to our Park and Rec. I think they're doing the education and they're working on the policy and they're working with the sheriff's office.
Okay.
So traffic doesn't work with sheriff's office on the e-bikes.
Yeah, so, yeah, Harold, it was actually January 7th of 2021 was requested, a citywide e-bike policy. Yeah, it's been on the follow-up log, so hopefully we'll hear more about that soon. Anybody else on Commissioner Corner?
Yes. Just a heads up here, a group of my neighbors has formed a consortium of sorts to deal with traffic issues on Quail Gardens Drive, Saxony, Leucadia Boulevard, and Encinitas Boulevard. They're calling it a Four Squares project. They're pretty powerful people. The Homeowners Association for the Encinitas Ranch, and the E3 group and all. And they've made a presentation to the city council that they want some action on that. So you'll probably hear from them, if not now, then during the next 12 months, they'll be active. And I just want to give everyone a heads up that this is because, for instance, I live within walking distance of 3 of the sites on the housing element, and within close distance, within half a mile of some other sites that are involved.
It's definitely going to have an impact on mobility on Quail Gardens Drive and elsewhere in the city.
Yes, we can look at the traffic jams on Encinitas Boulevard, Westlake, and Quail Gardens Drive today, and of course, once those housing projects are occupied, the traffic is going to be very interesting.
It'll be slower. People will have to allow more time to
There'll be
get where
about
they're going.
a mile square parking lot.
I'm sorry?
A parking lot. We'll turn these streets into parking lots.
Yeah. Okay. I have a number of items. First of all, 101 is currently being slurry sealed. Is that slurry seal, is what's down there now, is that the final product? Because it's rough. It's not uniform. It's not, you got patches. Some of it's going this way, some of it's going that way. Do you know if the slurry seal is done on Coast Highway between just north of the Panikin all the way up to La Costa?
I do believe it's being restriped. It is temporary.
No.
It's not the final streetscape project.
Right,
But
yeah,
it's being-
the whole road is being slurry sealed, or has been slurry sealed. They've ground out a lot of the markings, and so they put down a slurry seal, but it's very rough and uneven. And it's not like the slurry seal between A Street and El Portal. That's a smooth slurry seal. I believe that was slurry sealed. I don't know. I would hate to see new stripes going in on a very rough surface. So,
Yeah, that's our CIP team. I could pass the message.
okay.
Yeah, that's not handled by traffic team.
Oh, okay. All right. We had a couple comments from people about Piraeus Street, and I'm not quite sure what it is that they were asking. Does anybody else kind of understand what that was?
I think it was about classifying Piraeus to a different classification than the, draft mobility element showed, or what they think it will classify. They don't like that classification.
Okay. What is the class? Is that on the state highway map? as a collector or something?
Well, the mobility element for the city has its own classification for different roads. It's not relevant to what, the state map has routes that are, they have a specific name. It's general, like this is a state road or it's not. That's for the purpose of the speed survey. If you need a speed survey to enforce a speed or prima facie is okay, that's the only thing that matters. They have their own classification, but doesn't apply to us. Our mobility element update is going to classify our roads and then classify the elements of the cross-section that that road would have to get in the future. So for example, La Costa is I guess the hottest item. How many lanes? Right now, the mobility element, the existing mobility element of the city says 2 lanes in each direction. The new mobility element would say how many lanes in each direction, with or without a 2-way left turn lane. Does it need to have a bike lane? Does it need to have a sidewalk? Does it need to have a parking? So these cross-section elements will be classified, will be clarified in the mobility element, and then there is a secondary study, the street design guidelines of the city, that would give us details, exact dimensions, exact right-of-way for each street, that this road has to be 72 feet wide, edge to edge, right-of-way, and these are the exact elements: 7-foot parking, 6-foot bike lane, 2-foot buffer. That subsequent study will give us exact details, but the mobility element will classify roads and will tell us which cross-section elements will be on each road and how many of them.
Okay, so if I was talking to these folks, it would be safe to say to them, don't pay attention to the name. It doesn't really mean anything, the classification. I could tell them Piraeus currently is a street that requires a traffic survey every 5 to 7 years, according to the state.
Correct. I do believe Piraeus is classified as a straight route. But with regards to the cross-section of Piraeus itself, what the ultimate cross-section of the roadway is, with parking, no parking, how many lanes, that's what the mobility element would define.
Okay, so in response to these people, we would say wait to, pay attention to what's going on with the mobility element and the classifications, and then make comments and share your concerns when that's presented.
Correct.
Is that safe? Okay, all right. So whether it's called a collector, arterial, or anything really doesn't mean much?
No.
Okay, all right. And
well, I guess for the purpose of speed.
Yeah, but it doesn't require anything. Like a collector does not require a minimum speed. No. Or a maximum speed. Like you can have a major arterial with a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit.
It usually doesn't happen, but yeah, it's not against the law. Yeah.
Okay. So whatever a road is called has nothing to do with speed limits or anything else like that.
There's no provision in the law to mandate any kind of speed limit for any classification.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Let's see. Anything on the school pickup issues with St. John? Like right now at dismissal time on Encinitas Boulevard, cars line up in the bike lane to get into the school. I don't think that's an acceptable practice. I don't know what the city can do to prevent that, because you got cars parking and sitting in a bike lane, which forces the few bicyclists that ride on Encinitas Boulevard to go out into the traffic. So I think going forward, something needs to be done to address that situation. I personally don't think people should be allowed to park in the bike lane to pick up their children. That's just a comment that I have. I think it's dangerous because then sometimes the kid will run to the car and then they'll pull a U-ey across Encinitas Boulevard to go west. I think it's a hazardous situation. I think it's up to St. John's. I personally think it's up to St. John's to deal with their parents on and making sure that they don't park in the bike lane. But I think that's a dangerous situation. There was a meeting, a community meeting, I think on September 29th, regarding La Costa. I don't know if any of our commissioners went to that meeting. Did anybody go to that meeting?
Commissioner Hansberger was. She was.
Yes, I was there.
And what was the outcome of that meeting? What was the purpose and the outcome of that meeting? I could not attend, I was out of town.
So we presented different cross-section alternatives, one lane in each direction, one lane with a two-way left turn lane in the middle. We presented different intersection control alternatives for Vulcan intersection and for Sheridan Avenue, Sheridan Road, Road. And signal, mini roundabout, stop sign, and how these different controls affects the corridor capacity, the level of service at the intersections, the delay, the queuing. We presented these different combinations to the neighborhood, how these different scenarios would work between freeway and 101, and received input from the community. We are presenting the findings to the city council this Wednesday.
Oh, okay, great. I don't know if Commissioner Hunsberger, do you have any comments on that meeting?
They did a lot of work, and it was really interesting, but it was just basically design, you know, what different things could go in each spot and how they would improve traffic flow, how they would improve safety. You had some neighbors that liked some of the solutions, some neighbors that didn't. It impacted, a few roundabouts impacted properties substantially, so you had a few neighbors that were very outspoken. But I was just happy to see that the city had put time into coming up with designs, and there was quite a community turnout. It was really, lots of people had a lot of good opinions.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Glad to hear that. I guess the final thing that I have is, and I think I have some images and everything. There's a situation at the intersection of Sunset and Vulcan. And I have a couple of videos and, yeah, okay, so let's start with that. This is Sunset, is where the stop says, and that's looking down toward Encinitas Boulevard. There's a white edge line that has been put in there recently. What is the purpose of the white edge line? Is it to tell cars not to drive on the right side of that line if they're coming at us? Or is it, what was the purpose of that?
So whenever we have an intersection that's off from a standard 90-degree perpendicular T intersection, we have a similar case where Cornish hits San Alejo, or the other side of Sunset when it hits Orpheus. So we try to create a 90-degree angle where it not necessarily eliminates, but lowers the chance of a free right without slowing down off of northbound Vulcan in this case. Now, it has been brought to our attention that obviously a lot of drivers just ignore the line and continue the maneuver that they were making.
Pick one of those videos so everyone can see.
We did consider a few different options using physical barriers such as bollards or posts. One concern that came up was the use of this edge area by the bicyclists. So we cannot create a complete curvature with the bollards because it would block bicyclists too, especially the fact that lighting is a little limited during the evening. But one idea that came to our mind was to use some sections of bollards to have some parallel to Vulcan and then leave a gap for bicyclists and then pick it up again a little bit inside. Sunset, it is on our radar. We're aware of this situation and we'll find a way to make it better. But to your question, yeah, the purpose was to create that 90-degree slower right turn when a vehicle slows down and then turns right.
Right, yeah. I totally support the intention of it. But that's not a bike lane, correct?
No.
That is a road
just
edge
edge.
line.
Correct.
And so on the non-travel lane side, that's actually just a shoulder.
Correct.
And bikes are not required to ride in a shoulder.
No.
Okay.
But when we discussed the possibility of kind of following this white line with bollards that are like 3-4 feet away from each other to force that car maneuver. It was brought up to our attention that, hey, if you do that, a lot of bikers use this edge area and they would hit these bollards. So, and that was when we thought, well, at a minimum, we can leave some opening in that, we're in the area where these bikers might be at, so that
Yeah.
they can just continue.
I think I have a video or 2 or 3. And I have a couple other videos that show cars just cutting that corner, and you don't have to show those. But anyway, so okay, good. So that will be addressed, because people who are walking on that side of the road, that car can take them out pretty darn easily. So I'm glad to hear that the city is aware of this and they're going to do something. And, you know, I don't like vertical candlestick bollards necessarily, but, you know, unfortunately in this day and age, drivers need more signage to stay in their lanes. But anyway, so thank you for that. That's all I have. Anybody else have anything good for the order?
Sorry, I had one other thing, just to go
Yes.
back on the controllers, or is that an over-the-air software update to do the controller update, or is that a hardware actual
Oh, it's a
installation?
hardware upgrade.
Okay. And then, do you have any, I mean, it's really progressive to do them all, that's awesome. Is there education on that? Because I know a lot of people don't understand how those actually work, and, you know, clearly you have the sounds on some of them, but how do you actually update the population on the idea that, you know, you're gonna get the 2-second buffer before the cars start?
We do have some educational pamphlets. I don't think we have anything for signal timing. Do we? I don't think we have. But that's a good idea. I mean, we do have some for stop signs, for traffic calming, speed cushions. We have for speed limits. But yeah, it's a good idea to create a pamphlet for how signal operates and the signal timing and how people can benefit from.
Yeah. It's a big deal to do it. How many cities do they, you know, in California, for instance, how many cities have that across the entire
So
light controllers?
this new controller is a 2070 that we're receiving Caltrans funding. This is not city money. It's, I guess, a luxury that we have. We applied and we competed with other cities in the state. Caltrans gave us 1.23 million for the whole city, and it's not just upgrading the signals, also improving the crosswalks, high visibility. If there's, I mean, most of our crosswalks at our signalized intersections already have high visibility. There are a few that don't. Upgrading our push buttons to new ADA, bigger push buttons, touch, Polara. And this LPI, how do I put it? I'm on record. This LPI is not necessarily used at every intersection in every town, usually because these has a little bit of disadvantage for vehicles.
Of course.
And when you do not have that much pedestrian activity, that additional delay is imposed to that like extra 3 seconds or 4 seconds that the pet head turns on. The vehicles don't get their green, and this is, I guess, an imposed delay to the vehicles. If there is nobody present, if there is like one pedestrian every now and then, you don't want to lower the level of service of the intersection with this LPI introduction. Usually you have it where we have, I guess, kids, schools, parks, like high pedestrian activity. But because of the fact that not all controllers can provide you this option, we used it as a way of asking Caltrans to allow us upgrade all of our signals. Now, some of our signals in town will introduce this, but we'll probably deactivate it when it's not getting that much pet activity and go back to its regular operation. But the majority of our intersections where we have pedestrian activity, we'll make sure that LPI will remain in effect.
Great,
Hope-
yeah,
hope
just
this
I would applaud you
clarifies.
on that. I think that's even culturally, the idea that the car sees the PED signal, even if there isn't a pedestrian there, again, it's very anecdotal, but I think that has a real impact culturally on how people think about driving and think about intersections, so I applaud the move.
I have a quick question. Thank you for asking that. And mine was, is it activated or does it just go on its own? I mean, does it have to be pushed to provide the, okay, so if nobody's pushing it, then there's no delay?
Well, a lot of times, without even a pedestrian pushing, it will automatically serve it. Many of our signals have pedestrian recall, so even without a push, it would serve, but that is a correct statement. If the signal is, there's no ped recall on it, if nobody's pushing it, it would not serve that extra few seconds for the pedestrian.
Okay, because I was thinking that would just address the problem if, delaying the cars if there aren't pedestrians. But
Correct.
I also just wanted to thank you so much for writing this grant, because this is a big deal. I mean, and it's a lot of money, and I'm just so thankful that you guys put the work in and got this for our city, because it's a lot, it's gonna benefit a lot of people, and I really appreciate it. And I know it was a lot of time, so thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a good thing that most grants require some match, and this one doesn't require a cent of match. It's all state money.
That's great. Thank you for applying for it and being successful. Congratulations to you guys.
Okay, we're at the part of the meeting where we're going to adjourn, but I want to thank Amanda, Ian, and Abe for putting up with us all these hours after a regular workday. Thank you for all your efforts, and I guess we'll stand adjourned until February. Is that correct? February is our next meeting?
Yes, Chair, and
Okay.
we had this conversation before you adjourned. October meeting is back.
Oh, great, great. Can we make up for it like next week? No, just kidding. Thank you. We stand adjourned. Thank you very much.